Hello and welcome to Anime Style. I am Garion Reaver and today I'm going to be reviewing the third episode of Miss Kobayashi's Dragon Maid. Each episode of this series I'll review an episode of the anime, summarising the plot and giving my thoughts on it. Today is episode 3, Start of a New Life. That doesn't go well, of course.
It's the best!
The third episode begins with a series of quick shots showing how crowded life in their flat can be, with Kobayashi usually getting the short end of the stick. This leads into one of the biggest plot points of the episode, moving house. They're shown a few 3-bedroom flats and settle on one with an accessible roof area. What I'm wondering is, how the hell can Kobayashi afford it? Neither of the dragons work, for money at least, and there must have been some reason for her staying in the flat she was in. How can a single person's salary keep up with the rent for a 3-bedroom flat? Or did she just buy it outright? Because that's still a massive investment. This is never explained in the show, we're just supposed to accept that Kobayashi can afford whatever they did. The other side of this decision, the lighter side, is that Kobayashi is making a serious life choice based on these dragons staying with her. At this point, it's not been stated how long they intend to stay, particularly Kana, who is temporarily banished? Then again, dragons live a lot longer, so maybe temporary for Kana is a lifetime for Kobayashi. These are a lot of questions to be raised less than 3 minutes into the episode, but they're never really answered. Again, we don't know how long it's been since the previous episode, and I doubt that Kobayashi would get up and move after just a couple of weeks. It's hard to pin down. Anyway, they begin cleaning the flat in order to move out, and Kobayashi asks Toru about dragon cleanliness. Toru says she enjoys baths and uses her claws to pick bugs out of her teeth. She also explains a bit of how difficult it was for her to find a home in her old world. Humans would always show up and attack. Because of this, dragons would sometimes lick each other clean. This is something that Toru and Kana have done together in the past, further muddying the waters of how well they know each other. One incredibly explicit shot later, thankfully blurred out, Toru says that the dragons don't really have the same decency or etiquette rules as humans. This is a detail that will come up later. This conversation, which is cleverly edited while they're still cleaning, leads into Toru berating Kobayashi for her untidy habits, leaving beer cans all over, clothes everywhere, etc. I cannot help but compare this to a married couple lightly arguing, especially when Toru says, "You don't want Kana to pick up these habits, do you?" To which Kobayashi responds, "No." It's great watching them as this impromptu family, but to hammer it home, Kobayashi mentally compares it to her parents. She then turns it around by manipulating Toru's affection to convince her to clean up the messes, although this itself isn't a million miles away from what happens in relationships. After the cleaning is done, they move on to packing. This is mostly a series of funny bits where Toru finds a photo album of Chibi Kobayashi and is told to focus, Kobayashi finds some Maid manga and is told to focus, and then Toru finds a Maid outfit that Kobayashi bought, tried, and vowed never to wear again. Toru tries it on and it serves as rather niche fan service, followed by very obvious fan service when Kobayashi complains about Toru's bra size and bounces them. I'm just a guy, but I don't think girls actually do that to each other's boobs. I could be wrong. When they move into the new place, they take a little tour, divvying up the space. It's a 3-bedroom flat, but Kobayashi takes one of them as a study. I don't know why, we've never seen her do any work outside of the office and, based on the rest of the series, it's implied she can't. I suppose it could just be so they don't have a computer in the living room or in anyone's bedroom, but I don't know. Just seems a bit weird when it means that two of them are going to have to bunk together. These two are, of course, Toru and Kana, but it is really nice to see how touched they are that they have their own room. The fanservice meter then hits the roof when Kobayashi is having a bath and Toru convinces her to let her wash her back. There are a lot of hers in that sentence. Basically, Toru washes Kobayashi's back. It's not portrayed as a fanservice thing though, Kobayashi is never really used like that. Instead, it's a rather intimate moment between them that you can be sure Toru is enjoying more than Kobayashi is. They talk about Toru's thoughts on her human form, which she describes as complicated. Based on this scene, I'd say that Toru doesn't really like her human form, but it's a price she is more than willing to pay to be close to Kobayashi. The next day, Toru's making breakfast and Kobayashi offers to wash her as thanks for yesterday. They go up to the roof and Kobayashi washes her dragon form with a hose. A notable thing is that Toru is seen beginning to remove her clothing before cutting to the roof. I assume that's just an extra splash of fan service, but considering her clothes are her scales, it doesn't make sense in context. Also, given how large Dragon Toru is, and that she's not using her magic to block perception, someone must have seen her when she was up there. Continuing on, Issues arrive at their new place when Kobayashi is woken by a cacophony of noises, an ambulance, dogs, and their neighbours. Toru volunteers to go speak to the neighbours and proceeds to do so. One neighbour is cooking very loudly and gives Toru some stewed vegetables. One is playing music, and the show kindly subtitles the noise it makes, and the last uses a drill to make wooden figurines. They all agree to keep it down a bit. In the next scene, however, an argument is going on between the three neighbours, but Kobayashi suggests a noise schedule to compromise between all of them. This suggestion goes down well. Toru and Kobayashi then have a chat about neighbours, noise, and their preferences. Kobayashi doesn't like excessive noise, but wouldn't like things to be too quiet either. She lies down to take a nap and Toru leans against her, asking if she's too loud. Kobayashi says that she can be, and Toru asks if it's annoying. Kobayashi gives an evasive answer which upsets Toru, but then clarifies by saying that this life's fine and good enough for her. This satisfies Toru, and they both fall asleep there. On another day, at work, Kobayashi is invited to a work do and really doesn't want to go. Takuya suggests creating an excuse not to go, thus Kobayashi decides to host a party at their new home. Hearing that Takuya is invited, Toru asks if she can invite some of her friends, dragons. On the night of the party, Kobayashi and Takuya arrive and are greeted by Toru and Kana. Takuya compliments Kana's goth lolly thing, which Kobayashi previously described to him as having a tribal theme. Little touches like that hint to the whole otaku thing they supposedly have going on. Anyway, the doorbell rings and Toru opens to reveal a brief shot of a monster. She quickly slams it shut and opens it wide enough to tell the monster to look like the picture she sent him. This is Fafnir, whose voice was heard back in episode 1 when Toru called him for advice. His advice consisted of killing and cursing, but most of Fafnir's everything is played entirely for laughs. Fafnir actually says good grief. His first real appearance on the show mirrors Charlie Brown from Peanuts. If that doesn't tell you something, what will? And then we get to Lukua. Oh, what can I say about Lukua? Her real name is Quetzalcoatl, she has horns like Toru, gradient colour hair, and absolutely massive tits. I'm sorry, there is no other way to describe them. If Toru's fanservice is on the nose, Lukua's is a smash to the face. I mean, the very first shot you see of her is literally tits. She is great fun, but more on that later. Kobayashi comments on her outfit, and also that all dragons share something of a look. In the living room, Kana and Fafnir watch Takuya play not Dark Souls. Or at least I assume it isn't Dark Souls. I've not seen much Dark Souls footage, but it looks distinctly copyright dodging. Fafnir gives it a go and doesn't do too badly. Nearby, Kobayashi and Lukua watch and have a chat. Lukua says that Toru isn't the type to smile normally, so she appreciates that Kobayashi is good for her. I'm just going to say this here, I love her eyes. She's one of those anime characters who look like their eyes are always closed, but they dodged making them a big reveal by having her open them in her second scene. I don't really have much to say about this. It's a really cool design. Moving on. Toru makes food and Kobayashi offers Lukua something to drink. This serves as a gateway for Lukua to reference her backstory, saying that she'll need to check the drink for curses. Toru jumps in and reveals that Lukua was tricked into drinking cursed alcohol that caused her to do things with her own sister. You've probably guessed by now, but Lukua is the hardest character to talk about due to the nature of her design and backstory. I'm trying to keep these reviews as PG as I can, but this is what I'm working with. That's about all that happens in the episode, with it ending on Kobayashi, Toru and Kana living happily in their new flat.
So pretty.
One thing that confuses me is why Toru doesn't hide her horns. When she's around humans other than Kobayashi, her tail is gone, but her horns are always there. They clearly can hide their horns, easily even as Kana is seen hornless in both last episode and this episode. Why does she feel the need to hide them when Toru doesn't? One possible reason is that Toru is the most recognisable character on the show, so they wanted to keep her look as consistent as possible. But that seems flimsy to me. I don't really know if I'm honest. Speaking of looks, now that 3 female dragons have been introduced, one can make some observations. I'll get the obvious stuff out of the way first. Both Toru and Lukua are rather well endowed, with Lukua being incredibly so. Although none of their ages are clearly stated anywhere, not even in the manga from what I can tell, I'd guess that Lukua is older than Toru. As a former goddess, it'd make sense if she's older, plus she seems to be more knowledgeable and wise than the relatively ignorant and childish Toru. If that assumption is true, reminding you that I haven't read the manga at all, so I don't know if any of this is discussed or explained in that, there could be a direct correlation between age and Boob size. It's a bit inconsistent to what extent the dragons dictate their human form. Fafnir based his on a picture Toru showed him, but that could just have been a stick figure for all we know. I doubt they have total control, as Kana looks just like a human, but with horns and a tail. If she designed it from scratch herself, I reckon it'd be a bit rougher. How many children do you know who can draw a perfect portrait? The detail I find much more interesting, believe it or not, is the hair. Toru, Kana and Lukua all have gradient coloured hair, further reinforcing that there's some connection between being a dragon and the appearance of their human form. It's actually kind of odd that Fafnir doesn't, but I've put it down to a gender thing. I don't want to spoil anything, but there is other evidence to back this up. The thing that Fafnir and Lukua have in common, however, is that their names and backstories are ripped straight from mythology. Fafnir was the son of a dwarf king in Norse mythology who was cursed to become a dragon after stealing his father's gold. He used his dragon form to guard his treasure until he was killed by his foster brother. This is referenced when Toru says that he's an ancient cursed dragon who's been guarding his treasure. Lukua, or rather Quetzalcoatl, is named after an Aztec god. Just as Toru blurts out about Lukua, Quetzalcoatl was tricked into drinking cursed alcohol that led him to be intimate with his celibate priestess sister. Out of shame, Quetzalcoatl had his servants build him a coffin and set him on fire within it. There is more about Lukua in future episodes, so for now I just wanted to mention her origin.
Yeah!
This episode doesn't have as much character development as situation development. By which I mean they move house and deal with their new surroundings instead of having a lot of interpersonal interactions. Add to this the introduction of Fafnir and Lukua, who will appear more throughout the series, and it doesn't leave a whole lot of space for other things. One thing I would like to mention, however, is that Kobayashi doesn't appear to discourage Toru's romantic feelings. There were a few times in this episode where Toru did or said something intended romantically, and Kobayashi did absolutely nothing to deny or refuse it. Things like Toru sleeping with her head resting on Kobayashi. Unless you're very good friends or family or something, how is that anything but romantic? Despite her early refusals, Kobayashi seems to have accepted her feelings and decided to not rebuff them. This episode also continues a question first raised in the previous episode. How is Toru so good with humans? As Kobayashi pointed out, she constantly refers to humans as inferior and yet seems to get along with almost everyone she meets. She spoke to all the neighbours and seemed to do well, but contemplates killing them in the next scene. I have a couple of theories, but I'll see if they pan out over subsequent episodes. Kana is adorable. I mean, that's like 80% of the point of her in this series. 70%. I forgot about that scene. But yeah, there's one of those cutaway jokes where she's trying to find somewhere to sleep and ends up sleeping on Toru's lap. As I said, there's very little character development in this episode, but yeah, Kana's adorable.
Interesting, I'll remember that.
Well, here we are 3 episodes in and we're up to a solid cast of 6 characters, of whom 4 are dragons. I absolutely love what they do with Lukua and Fafnir in the rest of the series, so I was looking forward to talking about their introduction. Like I said, I'm trying to keep things as PG as possible, given the subject matter, but there are gonna be more awkward things ahead. Still, this episode was a grab bag of establishing, meaning we should be all set for some real character development coming up. Thank you very much for watching, please consider pledging to my Patreon linked in the description, and I will catch you later.